permeable to water, never, ever, ever, ever. So it's impermeable to water under all circumstances, okay? Then we kind of come up a little further here, and up here, this is actually a more accurate model. This up here is called the early distal tubule. And I gotta find a picture, go back to that one picture to show you the significance of that early distal tubule. So here, this is really slow. This here, they say distal convoluted tubule, but it's the early distal tubule. That actually makes physical contact with the arterioles, specifically the afferent arterioles. This collectively is referred to as your juxtaglomerular apparatus, which is very important in controlling glomerular filtration. Okay, so this is a very important setup. The cells right here in that early distal tubule called the macula densa cells, they sense if there's been a change in the sodium ion concentration in that tubular fluid, and they're like, oh, they're like chemoreceptive cells. They're like, something's up. And so if the sodium ion concentration is, and I'm not going to tell you what it is yet, but if it's something's not right, it's saying, hey, filtrations may not be right. Your blood pressure may not be right. We need to do something about it. And so what it'll do is it'll tell these cells here, called the juxtaglomerular cells, which are modified smooth muscle cells. They're baroreceptors. And they'll say, hey, you need to do something. So you already know the answer. It releases something into the bloodstream that will convert angiotensinogen to angiotensin 1.
ACE?
No, not ACE, renin. So that's actually where renin is produced. Erythropoietin is also produced there. So those juxtaglomerular cells is what produce erythropoietin as well as renin. But renin is going to be very important in blood pressure. And I need to have an adequate pressure for adequate filtration. So these guys are going to be very important in controlling glomerular filtration. Okay? So this early distal tubule is what contacts it. That's the biggest thing I want you to remember about the early distal tubule is that it has those macula densa cells, okay, which are involved in the regulation of GFR. Gotta go back to this picture here. Okay, so here, this is early distal tubule. What do you think this is? Well, yes, sure. Over here is the late distal tubule. What do you think this is? It's all
convoluted.
It's convoluted. So that's the distal convoluted tubule here. This is the late distal tubule. And I have to make the distinction between early distal tubule, distal convoluted tubule, and late distal tubule because it's going to be important. So, but you do have some reabsorption of certain ions in there. The distal convoluted tubule, the late distal tubule will be involved in regulation, kind of fine-tuning of sodium and potassium, and it'll be involved in acid-base balance. Now the late distal tubule, though, I want to emphasize this here along with this here. This is called the cortical collecting tubule. These two have very similar cells. One thing to remember, they are sensitive to aldosterone. They have receptors for aldosterone, and you should know what aldosterone does. What will it do? So we're going to increase reabsorption of sodium and do what at the same time?
Excretion of potassium.
You're going to increase the secretion of potassium, which would lead to excretion because it's eventually going to go out of your body. So you're going to reabsorb sodium, secrete potassium. So this is where we need to fine-tune. If you need to fine-tune your sodium levels or your potassium, we need some aldosterone around. And so aldosterone is going to target those parts of the tubule. So if I need to get more sodium or secrete more potassium, that's where parts of the nephron tubule are going to be affected by it. These part of the nephron tubule, here, here, and here, the medullary duct, are also sensitive to a hormone stored in the posterior. Okay.
Oh, sorry.
So, okay, tell me. ADH. So you tell me where we store it.
Posterior.
Posterior what? Pituitary. Where is it made?
Hypothalamus.
Hypothalamus, okay? So those parts of the nephron tubule are sensitive to ADH. So the permeability to water depends upon ADH. If ADH is around, it's not permeable to water. So if you have water in here, it's going to keep going. And you're going to have a very large volume of urine that's very dilute. If you want to conserve water, ADH goes up. What we're going to be able to do is the water permeability increases and we'll be able to reabsorb more water. We have to explain how we can do it because remember, water always moves passively, right? It wants to go from high to low to maintain osmotic equilibrium. Well, here in the interstitium, in the medulla, as we move down, it steadily becomes more and more concentrated. And so we'll be able to pull more and more and more water. So if I want to, I can really concentrate my urine. Say if I'm trapped out in the desert, don't have much water, I'm going to concentrate my urine. If I've got plenty, you make me drink like 5 gallons of water, what's going to happen? I'm going to pee and pee. I'm going to spend most of my day in the toilet because I'll pee and pee and pee and pee and pee and pee and pee. So, but we'll talk about the way the kidneys are set up. We can concentrate the urine or we can excrete a dilute urine. It's all comes the way this thing is all designed. Right now you're only getting a little bit. So you're kind of going over a little bit of the parts of it. But we'll go through the nephron tubule and go through the different major events. We'll go more in depth, but at least right now, I want you to be aware of the names of the different parts of it, okay? So here's our cortical collecting tubule. Once we start getting in the medulla, that's your medullary duct. And eventually goes papillary duct, drain into the minor calyx, then to the major calyx, then into your renal pelvis, ureter, and then we go down to the what? Bladder. I go bladder first. So here, so this is a section to the ureter to show you that transitional epithelium. And it also has smooth muscle. What do you think the purpose of that smooth muscle in the ureter is for? What's the muscle's job anyway? Yeah, it's good when it contracts, it's going to push the urine down. And so smooth muscle is adapted that if you stretch it, what does it automatically want to do?
Go back.
It wants to contract. And so if you have urine that's coming down here and stretches it, it's automatically going to contract, so it starts to move down to the urinary bladder where you're going to store it, okay? So that's your ureter. Here is a male's bladder, because I know this is a male because of the prostate gland. But girls, your bladder is the same. So you'll notice in the bladder, you have these ridges called the rugae. You're going to see that term again when we look at the stomach. The rugae are just kind of folds of mucosa. They're like little ridges. So if the bladder fills, the rugae are going to start to kind of flatten out, give you a little bit more room to fill up. So if the bladder's not full, you're going to see those rugae. They'll start to flatten out as the bladder fills. So you have the rugae. Here's the openings for where the ureters are. They're designed that they shouldn't go backwards. So when they come in here, kind of valve type structure, that it should not move back up into the ureter. It's going to empty in here. This area here, this triangular shaped area is called the trigon. It's just smooth muscle. Kind of acts as also as kind of like a funnel. So it kind of looks like a funnel where the urine is going to go down towards the neck and eventually into the urethra. So you have the trigon. Now the muscle in the bladder is called detrusor muscle. That's the name we give for the muscle. That smooth muscle in the bladder is called the detrusor muscle. If it contracts, what's going to happen? The bladder is going to start to empty, but hopefully maybe your bladder may start to contract, but you may not be in an appropriate place for it to empty. So you have to hold it, and eventually those contractions actually subside. So we'll talk about the whole process of micturition. That's the fancy term for urination. So here, if we say we are in an appropriate place, this contracts, I want the internal urethral sphincter, which is smooth muscle, to be relaxed. But I also want this external urethral sphincter to be relaxed, but that's skeletal muscle. So you have two sphincters. They both need to be relaxed in order for urination to take place. Males, your external urethral sphincter is going to be a little further away than the internal because you got the big old prostate, okay? So when these both are relaxed, you will have urine leaving, going out through the urethra. In the males, your urethra is much longer, right? And we have it in different parts. We have the one that runs down the prostate. We call it the prostatic urethra. Little thin area, the membranous urethra. And then you go out through the penile urethra. And believe it or not, the epithelium does change as you move down. It starts off transitional and then it starts to change. By the time you make it towards the end, it's going to be stratified, squamous, non-keratinized, okay, because you're going to have a lot more wear and tear. Okay, so, and it's actually designed the way it's set up is when it goes, it kind of creates a little turbulence, helps to clean out stuff. So then you don't get like bacteria and stuff that like to hang out in there. So that actually it's kind of cool the way it's set up, okay? So here I'll make sure, I'll pull out a model reproductive so you can you'll be able to tell me where the external urethral sphincter is, okay? That it's harder for the females, but the males it's easier. I can show you exactly where the external urethral sphincter is for the males, okay? So there's not much that you have to identify for the bladder or the urethra. Okay, we'll talk about innervation in lecture, so I won't talk about the innervation, or unless you want me to. Now, later? Later? Okay. But you remember pudendal. Well, yeah. As 2, 3, and 4 keep the poo and pee off the floor. You notice sympathetic or parasympathetics, sacral division of the parasympathetics is coming from that. Pudendal nerve. Pudendal nerve is part of your somatic nervous system. Innervates the external urethral sphincter. So remember, pudendal nerve from parts to be ashamed of. So that everyone wants to talk about peeing and pooping. So that's pudendal nerve. So that's going to be the external sphincter. But parasympathetics innervate the internal, okay, this sphincter cell. All right. So I'll stop there, and I'm going to have you make sure you look at some of the models.